Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3, volume 3 of Panels and Frames. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited to talk some nerd shit with you guys. It's my favorite show now. I love it.
Kev, how you doing?
I'm on the fence about Star Wars, but we'll get into that. Other than that, things are good. I just always want so much more from Star Wars than I feel like I get.
I agree. I always feel like they leave you a little bit like underwhelmed, so to speak, I would say. Although I will say I think their animated stuff, like I hear great things like the Bad Batch and stuff like that is always good. I just feel
Rebels
like
was fucking so
Rebels
good.
was killer, yes. But I always feel like the live action for some reason they just can't quite nail that feeling that and I'll say it even from the very beginning of the shows, you know how they have the Star Wars thing with the rope, like the faces that come on and it says Star Wars, which I find a little bit cheesy and lame compared to the Marvel one. Like the Marvel one is so dope, and they always put a cool song under it or like the theme song under it or something. And I don't know, from that moment in, you're like, I'm in. But the Star Wars one, like even from that moment in, you're like, oh, okay, what am I getting into? You know, I don't know. It just leaves you kind of with that feeling to begin with. So
I think they also have an impossible task because Star Wars fans are over more generations and more jaded and have had different levels of expectations than any other, certainly the MCU, but most other, IP fan bases. I, as a lifelong Star Wars fan, can confidently say that Star Wars fans are the worst, like literally the worst fan base there is. So like for example, Andor, I thought was fucking fantastic, and half of the community shit all over that show, like it was the worst thing ever, right? And so like every time they have a show, like half of the fan base like this is really good, and the other half is like this sucks.
And I
will. Did they have somebody in charge like Marvel does with Kevin?
They have Kathleen Kennedy in charge, which she also takes a ton of heat from the fan base and stuff. And I don't know why they didn't give it to Dave Maloney or whatever, who's doing like the, Mandalorian and the Boba Fett shows with what's his name. But I don't understand. Like he seems to have a better hold on some stuff than she does. I don't know. She takes a lot of heat too. And Tim, it's funny to your point. Like I feel like Star Wars is such a generational thing too, and George Lucas has always said it's always about the kids. Like he always tried to make things so kids enjoyed it, so every generation of kids would get it. And when you do that, it's kind of alienating the generation before that because
you feel entitled, like you owe them something. Like, oh, it's my Star Wars. You can't take my thing and make it something else.
And then you make it like these kids shows type thing, or you dumb it down so kids enjoy it, like the Jar Jar thing, right? Like everybody in my generation hated Jar Jar, but kids loved him, and so like the next generation of kids were like, "Oh, I didn't
have a ton of love right now. Like everybody's looking super fondly at it. Not everybody, but I guess my generation.
Yeah, but we had the Ewoks. Instead of having the planet of Chewbacca in that movie and the Wookiees building Death Star 2, they changed it to the Ewoks.
And even back then,
people hated the Ewoks.
And even back then, yes, older people hated the Ewoks and kids loved the Ewoks. You know what I mean? So it was like it's always kind of had that. And I think that's been hard for it to like break out, like that is your genesis. Having
I was a jaded teenager for Return of the Jedi, so
and having half your fan base always hate the next generation of things is a hard thing to like try to placate and deal with. So I think it's in a tough rut. But I will say, like,
I feel like they reconnected with me with Boba Fett and the Mandalorian and all that because Boba Fett was my favorite character when I was.
I just thought that show was so boring.
The show wasn't great, but the character was. Mando was the best thing they've done in modern Star Wars. Like that by far
with the Boba Fett thing, they missed a real opportunity to really do like a cool bounty hunter show and make it a little bit darker and a little bit, you know what I mean, and really push that.
What happened to Boss, that lizard dude? They should have brought like him in. Remember him?
Right. And all of them that were in like that scene in Empire where they're all standing there with Vader talking about like hunting down Solo and stuff, and they had all of them there. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I wish things would have gone a little bit more Empire-esque, going forward than kind of doing more of like Jedi and then the 3 prequels that we got and things like that. And then what JJ did with the final.
Want to talk about Acolyte to start?
I guess. I think we're going to end with that on the set list, but we might as well just open with it since we're kind of in that Star Wars universe. So, yeah.
Can I start off just saying that at the end of episode 1 of this, I could really care
Wait, should we
less.
just give a spoiler warning? Are we going to talk spoilers?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going to say that I could care less about the characters by the end of the first episode, and I almost didn't click and watch the second one. But the second one, I think, redeemed it a little more. It just seems like, why did it need to take 2 full episodes for me to even have some engagement with these people?
Yeah,
that's fair. I think the first one, because you always kind of want that first episode to set it up and grab you and be like, oh my god, now I got to see what's going to happen in the second one. And even the reveal or the kind of thing that happened in it, you were still kind of just like, oh, because they didn't really build it up enough to be like shocking. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, why? And so I'm hoping that as we go forward, we'll get more backstory and more issue into like the light and dark and why it is that way and what happened. But I also just felt like the hand-to-hand combat was kind of weird, like turning it into kind of a martial arts
Matrix.
movie. Yeah, and I just to me, I don't know, Jedis I feel like are such powerful, they're like the wizards in Harry Potter movies and stuff. Like they're these powerful beings, and even in this one 100 years before, there's whatever, there's still these powerful things in the galaxy. Like they're supposed to be keeping the peace, like keeping the peace in the galaxy, and they just seem so weak.
She dies from a knife.
Spoiler.
I mean,
yeah, but to somebody, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
Yeah.
like, also 2 things. One, the person she died, it wasn't like somebody just came up and like stabbed her with a knife. It was a very proficient force user, right? And then the second thing is they had a history, and we have seen there is examples in canon where that's why Jedi are not supposed to have emotions, and you could tell that Moss, right, the Matrix Jedi, I don't know the Jedi's name, but like the lady that plays the Matrix Jedi, she had a history with that Jedi, and the emotion was getting it. So like I could play small trick. You shouldn't have to do this, I'll say, but I can play tricks in my head where I'm like, oh, there's a deeper thing here where she's letting her emotion and nostalgia affect her being and her presence, and that's why she died, and that's against the canon of the Jedi. And if they lean into those themes, it could redeem it and make it good. If they don't and they just leave it unexplained, like, oh, she's just a lazy Jedi that like fucking wasn't paying attention, then
Lazy
that's kind of
Jedi.
lame.
Lazy
I think
Jedi.
it's kind of early to tell, I don't know.
I agree. And they
more lightsabers.
They do make a point in the second episode of saying she has to kill each one in a different way or whatever. So there's a reason why she's doing it that way or whatever. You know what I mean? Like one of them, she can't use any powers against or something like that. So, and she does have some powers, whatever those are. We haven't learned who her master is or how she's been trained. But again, it's just sort of, the way spoiler alert, the way she kills her is such a like looky-loo, like look over here. And then, you know what I mean? And you're like, wait, would a Jedi really fall for something like with these powers?
Right.
Only if they were compromised from a history, I think, and we're like, not in the present.
But you can usually like have that sense of
the Spidey sense thing.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And every time they showed her with like the knife sneaking down like into her backhand, I'd be like, well, wouldn't they know that's happening? Like sense that danger, like be like, oh, it's coming. I don't know. But anyway,
how many episodes? How many episodes is this going to be?
I don't know if it's 8 or 10. 10, do you know?
I feel like
I
feel like what's going to happen with me is once all the episodes have dropped, I'll sit there and spend the afternoon and watch it straight through.
Again, I'm a binger as well. Like I can't stand going week by week because I always forget things. Oh, your cat made a peek. That is so funny. She's peeking around the corner. That's awesome. She's like,
the birds are very active next door, and he is
there's
trying to eat some birds.
8 episodes. So that's an easy binge.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say the other thing about her, though. Sorry, T. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think Amandla, like DLA Stenberg, the main like protagonist that like you hear right in the middle. She was like really good at some scenes, and then really kind of missed the mark on some scenes. And I think she's a fairly young actress and like had a limited body of work. I'm hoping maybe through the season, like. I mean, she has a decent body of work, but nothing like huge. I think this is definitely the most exposed thing she's been on. To put that much weight on a character through the subtlety, I think it's very difficult. And I'm hoping that like she got better as the season goes on and it gets a little bit deeper. I just don't think she gave enough contrast and gave a performance that like really brought you in. Because a lot of times with Star Wars, it's the writing where you're like, oh, the writing is complete shit. I like the premise of this, I just don't know that character acting, like that, like subtle, deep connection she was able to really hit. Sometimes she did. Like I think she's capable of it. I just don't think it was consistent through these first 2
And
episodes.
I definitely think it varied, as we talked about a little bit beforehand, between the light and the dark versions of herself. Like it definitely, like I feel like they're almost the same. You know, you really need to
Right.
draw that line as to one being one way and one being the other way, and make them a definitive line instead of kind of mushing the two together and being like, ah, there's a little bit of sentiment in both of them and a little bit of like this weird caring and like whatever in them. I don't know. I agree with you. She didn't crush it. I thought
It's the yin yang. It's almost the yin yang though, with the little bit of white and the little bit of dark within the darker light. Maybe that's
but
what
the
they're
yin yang
trying
is
to-
the highest level of contrast. So it's not the yin yang. It's the gray pile of soup. You know what I mean? Like it's
But there
you know what I mean?
is white and dark. There is light and dark within the yin and the yang.
Right,
Those
a
both
little bit though.
exist.
It's supposed to
little
be a
bit.
seed, but the whole point of it is the contrast. I mean, I don't know if it's the point of it, but I guess it's how you look at it. I think the contrast is important. I don't think there's enough contrast. I agree with you.
I agree with that too. And I think I do like, I mean, some of the positives that I will pull out of it, so we're not just completely
Shitting all over it.
is I did like her master. I like the Asian Jedi guy who was her teacher and who's in it. I think he was really good. He sort of embodies what I look at as the Force. Like he had some sweet moves when they were like doing the hand to hand and like stole all of her knives like without you seeing it, and like
Soul, I think his name was, which is a
Yeah.
cool name too.
yeah, he was cool. I was really hoping because I don't know, spoiler again, like once you watch him, all this, but like he's on her list too because she's like hunting down these Jedis, and I was like, God, if they kill him in the second episode, I'm gonna be so pissed. Like he better make it through a few, you know what I mean? Because like she was able to go
Star
through
Wars
2 of them
Criminal Intent.
so quickly. Yeah, and I feel like if she kills a Jedi in every episode, I don't know what we're gonna be doing after episode 4. Like you're like, oh, now they're hunting,
Are we
which
going
I'm
to see
really looking
Yoda?
forward to the next episode and seeing the Wookiee Jedi. I'm really interested in like seeing that, how that comes to pass, and like hopefully they nail it. But I like that they've spread that feeling into the other beings that you've known forever and put a twist on that. I think that'll be fun to see how what his whole thing is, and what I'm hoping we get the full backstory of what happened on her planet too, why these 4 who were posted there and her sister burned the village down and supposedly killed everybody and killed her, died too, but didn't die.
Diving into spoilers.
Oh, hey, I mean the show's out, so like you kind of need to.
Are we getting Yoda? Is Yoda going to show up in this one?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but you never know with the council, who's on the council and whatnot, because they do bring it back. And I do like how some of them, we have sort of the the white look on their look. You know what I mean? They haven't quite donned the brown. They have the brown, but it's not quite as preeminent in the Jedi look as it is later on in the ones that we're familiar with. It's sort of this like fresher looking, younger looking Jedi scene and stuff. And I do like the different planets. I like how expanded it is. Like they've kind of done a good job with all of that. I'm just there's
the
certain
world
things.
building is pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that.
Any thoughts on the tattoo? Because they made a big deal
Yeah.
for her to show the tattoo and him to look funny at it, and her to. It
I
doesn't
like-
mean
I
anything. I
felt
didn't
like-
recognize it.
I felt like that was like kind of one of those dad, like parent judging the kid
Okay,
moment. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, oh, you went to college, dropped out of college and got a tattoo, right? Because you were like with us. And then as soon as you left us, like started this other ragtag life as like a, which again, I don't even think that career exists in the future, because like they made an allusion, like the one Padawan said, isn't that a droid job? And she's like, it is, but I'm more personable and like whatever. So I feel like
the mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of job probably got even more replaced because
That's
they're out on
thing
the
out of the,
starship doing the
go ahead.
fixing, and later on it's always the droids that go out on the starships and do the fixing and whatever. So I feel like that's one of those like replaced jobs in the future from technology.
That's one of the things that's in the expanded universe. Like in the books and comics, you see those things, and it's like a lot of Outer Rim stuff.
Mhm.
So like I think this is doing, which I don't know, I haven't finished it, but I think it's bringing in more of the expanded universe stuff and like reinventing it, because like I read a couple of books and like that was like a big thing, right? It's like the mechanics and like it was like a part of it, but like mostly what we've seen to this point is like the Empire and Coruscant, and then like the Outer Rim is just like Tatooine and stuff. Like we haven't gotten into that, so I like that it's making the galaxy feel bigger and showing other aspects of it. I don't know. I'm gonna.
Which I've always thought too in Star Wars is how big the galaxy is to have to use hyperspace to get places in it. Like it's vast, it's huge. So it's cool to see these other corners and these other, and even when they went to that Jedi temple, those guys dressed a little bit different than the main Jedis on Coruscant. You know what I mean? Like they had different outfits in their temple and stuff. And the one guy who was in like a meditative trance for 10 years or whatever was kind of cool to like. Oh,
why did he just kill himself? I thought he was going to be like important.
Well, no, he is part of like her whole plan to do things, but I like using the force thing, because that again relates to sort of how you come back after you die, like being able to use this meditative state to take your consciousness away and just sort of be like that for 10 years in an world. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll review it, kind of weekly and see how it picks up, especially next week, like I said, with the Wookiee Jedi and what happens with that storyline. And if
we'll review it all when they all come out.
Well, we'll do a post.
We'll do it each week
episode thing, but I don't know. It's fun. At least there's a new Star Wars show on to kind of go through the summer a little bit here with. And
I want more Rosario Dawson, so they need to just lean into that show.
I think as far as TV shows go, though, as much as we shit on Star Wars, I think they've had a better batting average than Marvel has. Like Marvel had Loki that hit, but their shows missed the mark. Because like
Echo was great. People pooped on Echo. I thought Echo was great.
Echo was good, but Star Wars Andor was really good. Fucking what you would call it?
Mandalorian was must watch.
Was pretty good. Mando was fucking awesome. Mando was like the Loki of Star Wars. I mean, I guess you did have that fucking Obi-Wan show, which was a disaster. Like that was probably the worst of them all. But like She-Hulk was atrocious. Like not even like the characters and all that other shit. Just like they chopped it up and there were plot lines that didn't make sense. Like you know what I mean? Like so I don't know. Like but Marvel,
it'll all make sense in the future.
What?
The whole Marvel universe is going to rest. The linchpin to everything is going to be She-Hulk.
I think you're yes and no, Tim. Like I feel like some of the Star Wars shows have hit, and some of them are just like incredibly boring to me. Like they just don't get the impact that you want them to. Like even with Fett. Like he's such a badass bounty hunter, and it just didn't. It could have been such a darker, like Western type bounty hunter show, and it just sort of was just so fluffed, so to speak, and just sort of like didn't get there. At least in the Marvel.
I'm not saying they're all good. I'm saying that on average, they're having a better batting average than Marvel's. Like if you look at all of the MCU TV shows, the average is not good.
A lot of the first season MCU shows, though, I did appreciate. I mean, Hawkeye set up some things, and like
I liked Hawkeye.
He had his powers and used it, and they brought in the other characters from some of the movies and tied them into some of the things. And like, obviously, Loki season 1 and 2. What If season 1 was a lot of fun. I think there's somebody getting animated. I think Star Wars dominates animation things as it is. Like,
although X-Men 97 is the high watermark for any animation now. I honestly, I think that's probably the best cartoon I've seen.
Can we get overlay graphics? Whenever you mentioned X-Men 97, we flashed something up.
Oh, you mean when I mentioned the last MCU show on a show called Panels and Frames?
The best MCU show, the one that's the highest rated ever. I mean, it is pretty impressive.
It's literally the highest rated show, and the last MCU. Kev's trying really hard to like bully me, but I'm not going to let him do it. Can't bully me for being a nerd on a nerd show, Kev.
Right. I am. Can I jump in? Pick the next thing we jump into.
Sure.
I am not sad that the Wasp. I am not sad the Wasp is not going to be around.
I am in agreement with that. Like I hated their casting her to begin with. Like I've always had a problem with her from Lost. Like my always thing was Kate sucks. Like I am the biggest Lost stan you'll ever meet. I love that show more than anything in the world, but she just always was a pain in my ass in that show. And then when she got this role, I was like, oh, of all people, and the Lord of the Rings show too. I was like, or the movie in the Lord of the Rings movie, when she was the elf. I was like, why her? Like there's so many better actresses than her. And I don't know. For her to call it quits, it's just such a like. Do they recast her? Is she just gone now? Do they kill her off in it? Like, I'm not quite sure how that
They're
works.
gonna have a soft reboot after Secret Wars. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're going to in the MCU, but I've always thought, and I don't want Evangeline Lilly. I don't really have a strong opinion like you do with her, but I don't think they properly used the Wasp in the MCU because, like,
Yeah.
she was, and Janet more so than Hope, but like in the comics, like she was part of the Avengers. Like she was like a leader. She was really prominent and like a fucking super badass character. And then she was always relegated to like fourth string in the Ant-Man movies. And I don't know if that is Evangeline. Am I saying that right? Evangelina? Like, I don't know if it's her fault or the writing's fault or what, but like she was just always like a very far back. Because even in like the Ant-Man movies where she should be number 2, Janet and Hank would fucking take the, like, and she would be like, oh, there's, and then Ant-Man's daughter was like, if she was always like the last one in the line, and in the comics, it's the opposite. She's like the badass one.
She was regulated to either the daughter role of them or the girlfriend role of
the whiny. Yeah.
She never.
Where was she? Where was she at the end of Quantum Mania? Where did we leave her?
Her and Paul Rudd got out of the quantum zone.
Okay, so she was out of there. Okay.
Yeah,
because I was going to say they could have left her there and just not,
they
been
should
like,
have
raised over the quantum.
Not even a slate on her, but just to create stakes so that fucking Kang would be badass and they don't always win. Like they should have had her either die or be left behind and switch places with her mom.
And had she announced this before that, they probably would have and just let her character.
Would have been a better movie and everybody would be happy.
But she was eating some ayahuasca root the other night and decided she was leaving.
Then to your point though, Tim, then the stakes would have been higher, like killing off a character like that, which they needed, that they really haven't done since, Iron Man, which will be a good segue to our next one. But like really since they haven't done since then, like to have a death like that would have actually, then it ripples through all those characters in the next movies and would make Cassie's character make a little bit more sense taking that role.
Second. Can I vent?
Yeah.
So you said we haven't had a death, and that's not true.
Well,
Maria from what's her face, Robin. I always use the wrong names. Secret Agent Robin from How I Met Your Mother died in fucking Secret Invasion, and it drives me nuts because she's one of the oldest characters from like very, very early in the MCU and had such a important pivotal role. And that show is such a shitty show. It's like they've erased their character in something that was non-consequential.
You had 2 deaths in that show too, and the one though sort of sparked the daughter's role, Emilia Clarke's role, because her dad dies in that. What's his name? And he was from.
Oh yeah, he was badass too.
Yeah, he was badass. And so they killed him off, which made her character grow into whatever. But yeah, to your point, like killing off Agent what's her name, it was so anticlimactic, and you were kind of like, oh, she died in this kind of this show that like was so bad and so terrible, and it didn't really raise the stakes a lot for that. Like Sam Jackson didn't really, it wasn't like when Coulson died in Avengers and like formed the Avengers because they wanted to avenge his death and everything, and was like really the catalyst for that. Her dying, which was in the same time frame as him.
That's her name.
Colby Smulders, yeah. Her death kind of just sort of went by the wayside and was part of like the war or whatever, the mutants like fight or whatever, like them fighting. So yeah, I agree with you, but it didn't have a lot of weight. Like that's my whole point. Like I feel like if Hope or if the Wasp had died in that one, it would have had weight that would have carried through with all 4 of those characters into the following.
I think that's my point. Is Maria Hill dying should have had weight.
Yeah,
it should have been, if it was written better and the show wasn't shit. That character we've been invested in for 15 years, right? And so, like, it was an aside because like we haven't had a meaningful death since Tony, and it's like you're right, but you shouldn't be right because they have killed off characters. They just done it in a very shitty way that had no stakes.
And it's funny you brought that up too, because I totally forgot about that too. Like we've put that show so far on the show. Put it out of
your mind, but like we were invested. That was another character that you could have added weight to.
Totally, I totally agree with that. And we didn't even hear about it like once we got into the Marvels, which was the film that followed that show, right?
Yeah, Sam Jackson just hanging out in space.
Okay,
Like
is
his
it easy enough?
lifelong
Is
friend died because of him, and he doesn't fucking mention her. There's no
nothing?
Oh well,
Nothing.
give a fuck.
But how hard is it just to keep her going? Like they switched Rhodey, you know,
For
in
what?
the
Maria
in the
Hill?
yeah. No,
I don't think
to change Wasp. Like Wasp shows up again, and it's a different actress, and we just deal with it just like we did in the first Iron Man, and you
well,
know,
it's certainly not a Chadwick Boseman situation. There's not like there's no situation where they're gonna have to honor the character. But what I'm curious about is as we get closer to Secret Wars and the soft reboot, if a character like that's gone, do you just wait? Because you're going to be rebooting a lot of these characters in the next 20 years or 15 years, right? Like, there's going to be a new Captain America, a new Iron Man, like not a new Captain America, a new Steve Rogers, right? Like, we already have a new Captain America, but like, there'll be a new Steve Rogers, a new Tony Stark. Do you just say, like, fuck it, like, we're not going to recast her, we'll just wait and be part of the reboot, like, write her off in the story? I don't know. There's enough going on, you don't need her.
And I think, though, to Kev's point, I think she's one of those characters that it's pretty easy. You could replace her with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, it's you could just find somebody to fill in for that role. And I think people would just believe it, like they did with Rhodey.
But they're definitely not doing another Ant-Man movie, so she'd be a cameo anyway. So who the fuck cares?
Right.
You know what? Bring fucking Wasp into the battle in Secret Wars, like the portal scene, but just have her fucking mask on. So you don't even need to know who the actress is. Right, that's the only time you're going to see her. There's no other plot reason that you would have to see her except for a cameo in Secret Wars. So fine, like go walk away, Evangelina.
Now, how do you? So how do you bring back Iron Man?
Oh, there's lots of ways you could bring back Iron Man. I have theories. Do you want to give a theory? I have a theory.
Yeah, bring it back because I mean, Robert Downey Jr. talked about he would gladly, like after being away for a bit, he would gladly come back because he's so intrinsically tied to that character. And Tony Stark, he said, is like the closest character he's ever played to himself, even though he said Tony Stark is way cooler than him. But I mean, if anybody ever embodied a role and fit the role perfectly, it was that role and him. And I think this is one, though, that if you do recast it, it's going to be hard depending on how you set it up and bring it in, because it's such an iconic thing. I think it's really cool, though, that he said he's open to coming back, which makes me believe that maybe they've had talks about this or brought it up to him already.
They've definitely had talks about it, and they 100% are bringing him back.
I would
zero doubt in my mind.
Isn't there like a storyline in the comic books where Iron Man is Doom's right-hand man?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go that direction, though.
I don't think you could turn him evil because he's too iconically good. But you will say, I mean, you can
back in theory for
I'll tell you, like, if you haven't heard or if you haven't seen it, there's the Actors on Acting that Variety does every year, and him and Jodie Foster, Robert Downey Jr. and Jodie Foster sat down and had this conversation back and forth, and they talked about their iconic roles and aging and how Jodie Foster doesn't get Botox or any work done. She likes aging naturally, and how she's looking back at her younger self but happy with where she is. And Robert Downey Jr. was saying the same thing. And then they talked about iconic roles they played and would they reprise them. And he said he would definitely be open to coming back as Iron Man because of how much he liked playing it and how close it is to his heart and what it was. So you can check that out on Variety and see the full interview. But it was just really interesting to us to hear him say that and be like, he's open to it. Because I don't think, I mean, who knows what will happen in Secret Wars, and we can talk about that next too with the Avengers movie and who's gonna, what they're gonna do.
Don't skip my theories.
I'm not.
Before you go
I'm bringing it back in. That's what I think we'll talk about it
Christ.
next. But I want to keep it on Iron Man here and say that it's just a really cool thing to hear. And how do you think it would come back, Tim? Like, what do you think they would do with bringing him back?
I will just say first, like, there has to be a way. Yeah, Kev, it's the fucking multiverse. The reason they did the multiverse is so they could bring all these characters back. If they could bring back Hugh Jackman, and Kelsey Grammer Beast and fucking Jennifer Garner Elektra, like,
and
yes,
Picard.
There's hundreds of ways you could bring back Tony Stark. I think it is likely going to be he is in the other planet, because ultimately what you're going to have is two universes, heading against each other. Like, that's where Secret Wars goes. Like, you're going to have two fighting for their life and then into battle war. Yeah, into battle world. The one thing I wanted to say, and this isn't a theory of how it happens, but what I think they should do is lean into his flaws a lot harder. Now, I'm not commenting on the Infinity War saga and his arc. I think it was perfect. I think it was the best way to build the MCU, and I think that character was great. But it was watered down from the comic books. Like Tony being an alcoholic and like a flawed, like super fucked up, and like all of the
that one cover of the Avengers where he's like with the drink and all sweaty on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's storylines like where his alcoholism literally kills people. Like when you have that much power and money and that like his flaws. So like I think they could bring him in a very like dark, different version of himself and give like a what do you call that? An arc where he comes back. I think that would be really cool.
Almost like what they're doing with the Wolverine character in this other we're done with the main Wolverine that we're all used to, and the Logan was kind of the end of that. They're bringing in a different version of this, and that's part of the reason Hugh Jackman came back was because he doesn't have to play the old version. It's the new one, and it's this different Wolverine. And to your point, it's like what he's done and kind of that feeling where is it the one where he killed all the other X-Men? Is it, what version of it is it? So yes, to your point, they could very easily do kind of the same thing with Tony and find those that side of him.
The Demon in the Bottle, I think, was the name of the run or something like that. The other thought I had, and this is, I've not heard anyone talk about this. So if this is something, I want credit, but the only way I could see people adopting and accepting a new Tony Stark is if the old Tony Stark befriends him. And there is an opportunity here because the character Tony Stark is the one character besides Loki that would love himself. And he already has a great precedent with Peter Parker of being a mentor role. So this one, the one that died, and I don't think you're going to bring him back from the dead. So what I would love to see is RDJ from a universe meets a young Tony Stark, like a real like kid, maybe just out of MIT, and mentors him and gets him away from the bottle and the alcohol and sets it up. And then the young Tony Stark in 15 years becomes the MCU's new Iron Man. And that way we all have permission as fans that it's not comparing him to RDJ. It's RDJ's protege. And they're both Tony Stark. It's not the Anthony Mackie, right. Sam Wilson thing. It's still Tony Stark, but taught by Tony Stark. And that egotist, like you could have so much fun playing with like the maniacal, like, narcissistic tendencies with him. I think that would be a great fucking storyline.
I love that. That would be awesome. Like that is a great idea.
So, no Iron Lad in that situation.
I mean, we're probably going to get Iron Lad because of the Young Avengers. What's weird about Iron Lad is Kang. And so, yeah, I don't know. But he's not a Stark though. Iron Lad is Richard. Yeah. Richards. He's
Iron
Franklin
Lad is
Richards.
the dumbest name ever. No one says lad anymore. Hey, laddie.
Okay. I mean, you could say that about a lot of the names, right? Like, but
right.
We Kev, in this world, you got to suspend all that shit. You don't think about it too hard, right? Like, there's a guy walking around in spandex that calls himself Spider-Man. Like, you're like, okay, like, cool. Like, and that's what I think missed in the 90s movies where they tried to water it down or justify it for normies. And they're like, right, they always hinted at it, but like they'd make a joke about it. Like, oh, what do you expect? Yellow and blue spandex? Or, oh, like, I guess, what's your name? Make fun of it. But like, no, just fucking own it. Like, it's just part of that world. Don't think about it too hard. It's fine. Like, I think Hulkling is a dumber name than Iron Lad. I think all the Young Avengers are pretty fucking dumb, to be honest.
Hulkling,
but
yeah.
The Foundling.
They put so much into Young Avengers, though. We are definitely getting a Young Avengers movie, and I'm kind of like,
maybe we get a Young Avengers cartoon. A Young Avengers cartoon would be cool.
They put too much into Kate Bishop and fucking Miss Marvel and the boys, Billy and Tommy. Like, they are 100. That is the only thing they did have connection through Phase 4 and 5 was the Young Avengers. Like, that is the only thing they've truly been building. There's no way they don't do that. I just don't know if it was a good choice.
I think it's funny though, the names, like it is just like when you're talking, because they're like Young Avengers, so you have to take the younger version of the name of the other thing, and just like I think it's kind of funny. It's just one of those funny things. But yeah, it's not too serious on that note. It's just kind of silly. But
yeah, what's the scene like? What's your name? Iron Lad. They would all weigh into him, be like, dude, what the?
Okay, but besides the name, the Iron Lad story is pretty fucking cool, right? Like it's a bad guy it's actually kind of like the Tony story I was just talking about.
right.
Like see his destiny and like with the bottle and he's like he rejects it and turns into a good guy and like I don't know. There's too much going on in the MCU though. They can't do all this side. I mean they can, but I feel like they gotta just like focus and hone it in a little
And
bit.
figure out how what the reset's going to look like after everything and like what you're doing, where it's all
You
going.
know who's gonna figure it out.
That leads us to dun 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 rumors about Shawn Levy taking over directing the next Avengers movie, which I mean, it makes sense from the standpoint of how much money I think Deadpool and Wolverine's going to make, and hopefully what the storyline is going to do. And it would kind of make sense for the guy that directed that movie and knows it so well to do the next Avengers movie that kind of is leading after this one. So I feel like that makes sense. If nothing else, he will at least have a producer credit and be involved in it in some way. I'm hoping he also directs it, so it has that flair and his touch to it, because he's become very good. Like you look at some of his earlier films and you're like, oh, I can't believe this guy's the guy that's like can come out of this into this, like the Pink Panther movie, Night at the Museum, some of those movies. But you're like, okay,
was great. That was a great movie. It was so fun.
Which one?
Night at the Museum.
Oh, it was very fun. Like it was, but that's what really set him up, like to be in some of these other movies. But like, I mean, even Free Guy, the one with Ryan Reynolds,
that was good.
Great movie. Like that was a very fun, breaking those fourth walls and doing it. So he has that. I just don't know how much the fun, how much, because he's very good at the fun in joke type things, like which is what Deadpool is. I don't know how much that translates over to Avengers. I think it would be fun to see how that works out, but I'm hoping, again, because he's such a big part of what's going to happen in the future, that he's involved in it in some way and directs it. But
I always felt like the fun of those recent movies came more from what's his face, Ryan Reynolds than Levy. But what I think does definitely come from Levy is like the precision and the execution, right? Like you can't just have like the slapsticky comedy, because that you end up with like Taika Waititi, right? Where it's like he's fun, but like the CGI, the execution, the action was sloppy, and he didn't have that same meticulous. I think Levy is like, from the Deadpool movies, from Free Guy, and from the trailers, it's like the most clean, precise, like awesome action. He gets it. I also don't know if it's his skill that's getting him this role or just the right place at the right time, because Marvel's had a lot of like eggs in recent history, and like they want to keep somebody in house. So they're like, hey, you did a good job. And here you go.
He has that relationship with Ryan Reynolds from past movies and the Deadpool movies, which helps too, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm comfortable working with this guy, and this guy's comfortable working with me. We have this relationship. He gets it. Let's go, let's use him in these, and it kind of grows his role then as well. And I will say, rumors are that sources say that close to 60 MCU characters could reprise their roles, including everyone from Ruffalo, Hemsworth, Cumberbatch, Hiddleston, Simu Liu, Karen Gilliam. All of them are rumored to be in it. And it also stresses that unlike the first Avengers movie, where it was really, RDJ, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Hemsworth, and Ruffalo as the four main ones, this one would be much more of an ensemble cast where everyone kind of gets equal footing in it, which I don't know how you do with 60 characters.
Gonna be insane.
That's like a 4-hour movie, right? Like it has to be 2 movies and 400 minutes and like all that stuff. But it could be a lot of fun to see all that come back and see how they do it. So I don't know. It's a lot.
Super concerned about it. I mean, like I'm going in optimistic, and if anybody's gonna do it out of the modern guys, like I feel like this team can do it. But like ensemble movies like that suck more often than not. Like the Russos can pull it off, and fucking James Gunn, whether you like him or not, he can pull that shit off. But so often 5, 6, 7 people ensembles, they fucking don't hit. And like to try to do it with 60 people is going to be, granted, it's not going to be 60.
Maybe it'll be teams. Maybe the new Avengers, you'll end up with teams. The West Coast Avengers will exist. And then that way you can have different parts of the world with different groups of Avengers.
The hard part is, though, you kind of need to have things set up going into it because you can't spend a lot of time building characters
Like
in
you
that movie.
do in
Right,
the other
and
Avenger
so you have to
movies.
have everything kind of set up and into it going in, so you're not wasting time. And if you don't, then people are like, well, where the hell did this come from? Well, they didn't even explain why this happened, or like what this is, and you're like, oh, well, that happened off camera, or that happened a couple of years ago before this act, and you're like, yeah, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit into this stuff. So
Well, that's why they're bringing back all of the old actors. So, like, I agree, Kev, you could have like West Coast Avengers, or like there was a point where every state, there was a run where every state had an Avengers team, but that would be too many new characters and too many new storylines. I think the only way you even have a shot, and I still don't think it's possible, but the only shot you have is to continue all of the old storylines and pick all these characters up at different points. And so when you have a knowing look between, like, fucking Scarlet Witch and Vision, like, the story. You don't need to do any setup, which
Right.
is another complaint about Marvel, because they're like, oh, you have to do all this homework. If you're going to try to do a 60-person ensemble Avenger movie, there's going to be a lot of homework. Like, there's no way they can establish all of that in film.
I mean, even with this, I think there will be a lot of death. Like, I think you will have a lot of death regardless. I think some of it may happen in the first 5
They're going to
minutes.
have to kill off 55 fucking people to make it a good movie.
In the first 5 minutes, just everyone dies. Like, the planet just
Yeah.
gets nuked and you're done. But I do like when things like that happen and you're kind of shocked at the beginning. Like, oh my God, I was not expecting that.
Well, it opens up and the current team of Avengers gets killed, whoever they happen to be. And then the whole movie is the new team that has
new team
new
forming,
waves of
them. Yes, there you go.
You know what? I just thought of a great fucking idea. So
Kevin's on a roll today.
I know, right? Maybe I should get some writing credits.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sit down and start writing some of this down so you don't forget it, and we'll
Hickman's version of Secret Wars. There's a cabal that one of the ways you could protect your universe from the incursion is to destroy the other universe.
Mhm.
And they run into different versions of the Avengers. So instead of having all of these cameos have storylines and be part of the main arc, you can have like 6, 7, 8 of like your main hero team, and all the other ones are actually the enemies because they're variants of them, and they're not bad. They're good for their universe, but like they have to defend themselves against the other one. So you're going to end up with like fucking like Steve Rogers against Tony Stark, but not from the same universe. Like they're going to be fight. And that's where you can bring in all the cameos. You get the general gist of like, oh, it's Iron Man. I know who that is, but without it having to like tie into like the main story arc. It literally could just be in action scenes. Half of them don't even need to have lines. They could literally just be like Civil War, like Captain American Civil War, where it's just like that big tarmac scene. You can have shit like that over and over again, universe after universe, where you're just trying to have like the incursions. And then the second Avengers 6, would be Battle World. So it's Star Wars, or it's not Secret Wars Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1's the incursion. Time runs out. I'm sorry, I'm going way too fast. Where it's fighting amongst the universes to save it. And then the second half, Doom's there on Battle World, and the whole movie is just the new whoever's left on Battle World.
I like it.
So how do you bring Venom in?
I think they totally could pull it off.
How do you bring Venom into all that, since Venom's crossing over?
Can I just say, fuck Sony, like, so hard. Really, after Madam Web, they should have had their movie making pass revoked. It'd be like, hey, stick to the animated Spider movies. You do really well with those.
I think it's really funny too. Yesterday, my wife went to a work thing, a panel that they had at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where one of the creatives from Sony was there, like the chief creative head of marketing, whatever guy, and he was talking about how Sony really puts a lot into what separates them from other studios is how they put a lot of care into developing their stories and curating their directors and their writers into things, and they didn't want to. They're really proud of themselves for not becoming a streaming service and not like going that route and having shows and stuff. And my wife was like, yeah, but you can't say that about like your Marvel movies, like Madam Web and even Venom. You like kind of go against
Morbius, and then I think
like
Craven's just gonna be as bad.
All of this canon, and then Sony comes in and is just like, nah, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this. And I think we've talked about it off camera and stuff about the Venom trailer. I'm hoping everybody has seen it by now, but there's a shot in it where it references the end of Multiverse of Madness, or no, the end of the Spider-Man movie, where
No Way
he
Home.
where he's at the bar and Venom is in the other world in Spider-Man's universe and leaves behind the symbiote at the bar. And they show that clip in the trailer with what's his name, who is in the Doctor Strange movies, is now playing this other role as the army guy, and he captures the symbiote in that world, and you're like, how does that exist? Because
he's the symbiote killer, right? And then there's the whole
it's Ode, right? Not Ot. It's symbiote.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. Symbiote.
I'm from Baltimore.
Wow.
Water.
And then the guy there, the bartender, is not bartending in that scene. He's sitting at the bar with this other guy,
and he does have a different hairstyle. Like, I think his hair's down instead of like where it was in the other one. But still, it's in that. Unless it's like you're saying this happened across.
To connect it. How can you not connect it somehow? Or is that the whole connection?
It's fucking Sony. That you give. This is the part I don't know if you realize is you're giving him way too much credit in fucking the Morbius movie. They brought in fucking what's his face, Vulture, right? And there was like, I don't know, I think it has something to do with Spider-Man, right? And then that was only in the fucking post credit, and the trailer had nothing to do with the movie. They throw this shit in there to get nerds talking. They're trying to mimic what the MCU did with the Easter eggs, but they're not thinking it through enough. They don't talk interdepartmentally. They don't talk to the MCU. They don't talk to anyone. They just fucking do an idea unchecked, throw it in there, hope the nerds like it, and they're like, oh, cool. So like, it may be in there, it may not be in there, it might have nothing to do with it, but I really don't think the way we analyze like what Kevin Feige's doing, like, oh, that's gonna come back. I don't think Sony has any of that. I literally think they saw it. You know what it was? It was a suit that was like, No Way Home made $1.4 billion. Let's tie it to that. Get some of that money in our Venom. And like, how can we do that? Let's recreate
what about the Chen character, the woman? Wasn't she also in Multiverse?
Which one?
You are got to be way more specific on some of those variables, my man.
You just threw out a whole bunch of... There's a scene in the trailer when Venom is dancing with Madame Chen or whatever her name is. And then there's a scene with her looking, and there a white thing comes through from another multiverse. And I think that references back to the multiverse or the Spider-Man movie, one of the two.
I know Mrs. Chen, but I don't remember her being in.
There's a shot of him dancing, the Venom character dancing with her in the trailer. And again,
but when was she in the MCU?
Hold on, keep talking.
You know what happened, T? Kev was taking notes and watching other videos. He's like, oh, that's a good point. I'll bring this up, and Wook's going to know what I'm talking about. I'm going to sound smart. I'm going to sound witty.
No,
and then I question him. He's like, I don't know.
You're supposed to pick that up, Tim, and know what he's talking about. I don't know. As standalones, I wish they would just, if they're going to do that, leave it as standalones in its own universe and not try to connect it into the other ones. That was the one thing that at least Madam Web did do, was it didn't really tie into anything else, because I mean it was so bad anyway.
I heard that they changed it. Like, it used to tie in, and they realized how bad it was, and they were just like, we gotta fucking disconnect this thing.
Like, yeah, it's got to live in its own death world where it doesn't come into this one. So I don't know. And Venom, it's cool that they actually were able to finish the trilogy and do it. I just hope there's some cool things in it. I just always looked at them as kind of the fun other side of Marvel, because they're Sony movies and they don't really connect in any way. And I hope it kind of stays like that. But I mean, there is Spider-Man, and there's a shot in the trailer with young Spider-Man, young Peter Parker in it. So there's a tad of a tie-in. They said it won't really do it, and I thought we talked about too in Spider-Man.
Different Spider-Man. It doesn't need to be
right.
You know.
What about the horse, T? What about the symbiote horse or whatever? When he touches the horse.
That's badass looking. I mean, it could be really cheesy on screen and whatever, but in the trailer, it looks pretty freaking badass. And I love the humor in it, the funny relationship between Eddie and Venom, and the way like they're so, even when he's like doing the whole line about "we are Venom," and he's like, "No, not yet, we are," and like it's so funny. Like the voice is so. which is great, which gives it that levity and that funness to it. Like, don't take it so seriously and don't try and connect it to things. Let it live in its own place and do its own thing.
You know what the problem is here for me, and this is a big where you become protective or whatever, but Venom is an integral part of Secret Wars. In the 84 run, not the Hickman run, that was the first time that Spider-Man got the symbiote and became black like fucking Spider-Man. And it seems like they were setting it up in the end of No Way Home. You're like, oh, cool. They got the symbiote in the MCU. Let Kevin Feige and Spider-Man 4 further the ball, and then we'll have Venom Spider-Man in Secret Wars or leading into Secret Wars. And that would have been awesome. Venom 3 taking the symbiote back or trying to mess with that is going to fuck it all up. Or it's not, but it's going to raise questions. And it just puts a dirty taste in my mouth where I'm like, I don't even want it anymore. Like, just fucking don't bring it to Tom Holland. Like, leave it in the Sony verse. And like, we're done. And it's a shame because that's such a cool part of like forget Sony versus Disney, but like just Marvel. Fucking Venom and Spider-Man is such a huge fucking part of it. It's a shame that like those are the characters that they're fucking up. Like, why couldn't they have the Hulks, right? Like She-Hulk and the Hulk, and like, okay, fuck those characters up. It's fine. But like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's people that love the Hulk.
Red Hulk.
Yeah, and Red Hulk's gonna be dope. I take that back. They can't have the Hulk. They get none of them.
They get none of them. I mean, it could be much ado about nothing too. It could tie in a different way, and it could still not fuck up things like we think it's going to, because it is just a shot in a trailer, and sometimes that shot's not even in the movie.
It could be trolling us. It could be like a fucking
Totally.
like a bug or something that looks like it, like a bug in jelly, and they like trap it. Like, oh, I got that bug for you anyway.
And a different way of doing it. So who knows? I'm hoping it is something like a one-off like that, and it's not fucking with it, because they did tease that Venom would be in the next Spider-Man movie, or like that would be there, but it wouldn't be the main thrust of it. Like, he was going to fight the other, like there's another big bad coming in that movie for him to like deal with, like, because what's his Kev, your favorite character is going to be the mayor of New York at that time anyway, or whatever, and take it over. So it's going to be different. He'll be one of the bads. There'll be another bad, and then the Venom thing. So who knows exactly how it's all going to tie in and what's going to happen. Kingpin, that's Kingpin's supposed to be running New York at that time. So we'll see how it all connects. But Tim, I totally hear what you're saying, and I'm hoping whatever that shot is or whatever they're doing isn't messing with Feige's MCU and what's in the Disney MCU as opposed to the Sony verse. So yeah.
I guess the last thing I'll say about Sony, because I do love to shit on them as everybody does, but I have to remind myself that Marvel selling off their IP literally saved the company. And Sony with the I can't remember names right now, but the original Spider-Man trilogy really did a lot for, and actually Fox with X-Men did a lot for comic book movies and making like proof of concept for these big studios that allowed for all this to build. So even though they suck balls now, and I hate that they have it, I don't know that like I would go in a time machine and like change things, because like Sony needed to have Spider-Man and Fox needed to have X-Men to get us here. Yeah, I just wish Disney could be like, the Raimi. That's what I was trying to think of. The Raimi trilogy. I just wish they could fucking get it back now that it's like, you bought Fox. I know you're not going to buy Sony, but just fucking acquire Spider-Man.
Which was nice. They gave it to them though for Homecoming, because they did such a good job of like bringing him in there and having that storyline develop without having to do the, like we talked about, without having to do like the whole evolution of him and getting bit by the spider and retelling the story again, like, because we've already had it twice in Sony. So yeah, but they definitely that first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire and Raimi was awesome. Like it felt like that
was the first like stellar, like, oh, this is like a legit good movie.
Right. It was almost like the first X-Men movie where it felt like, okay, we finally have a good comic book movie. Like, and even the second X-Men
year,
movie.
wasn't it? Or they were
close.
X-Men? Yeah, they were very close.
Yeah. And I
remember Spider-Man came out in 2001, right before 9/11, because they had a scene that was supposed to be the finale where he puts a web between the Twin Towers, and there's cuts of a trailer. That's how close it got. That was the trailer that he was like swinging between the Twin Towers. And then 9/11 happened, and they cut it out of the movie and out of the trailer. So it must have come out fall 01, I guess.
Around there.
And I guess X-Men was 2000. So X-Men came out the year before.
And it was that. I mean, that was a good run. Like that felt like we were like on the track finally to doing some, setting it up. But that did build to where we are now, which, you got to take some of the lumps with how bad some of those did get with other things. But yeah, I mean,
You think
I don't
Venom
know.
3 is gonna do well in the box office?
No.
I think it'll do all right. I think it'll do all right. I don't think it'll do great, but I think it'll do all right. I don't think it'll be. I don't know. Like everything's so down right now.
It should be straight to DVD. It's one of those movies that probably shouldn't even go to the box
Digital. But
office.
Sony doesn't have a streaming service, so I don't know where it would go.
Yeah, that's gonna point. Netflix, right? Don't they? I think the
Right?
movie
Yeah,
is gonna end up on
that's where
Netflix.
Madam Web and stuff and Morbius is. So it'd probably have to go to Netflix. But yeah, totally.
I don't see any movie breaking through except for Deadpool and Wolverine, and I think Inside Out too in the kids' world. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of hype for that this year. And I know that's like a different world than this, but I think those are the only movies that are breaking through. All these other movies, I've just and not even based on them being good or bad movies. It's just the way the economy is and like society is right now. I feel like it's gonna be really hard to break through.
I feel like kids movies, especially. Look at Garfield, won the box office last weekend
Yep.
against everything, and was really close first weekend it came out because kids movies dominate. I mean, you got to take your kids, and sometimes you go twice, 3 times with them.
You sit them in the air conditioning for a few hours. Hopefully, they
Yep.
fall asleep during the movie, and you can get them into the car. And
Yeah.
Oh, and Moana 2's coming out in the fall. That one will probably break through because that has the history, right?
The
That's
rock.
like that's right. That's like an easy one, but I don't know,
Yep.
man.
the cock.
Yep. Well, speaking of two universes and comic book universes that don't always hit, the DCU announced a little bit of a casting call this week, and they announced that Wendell Pierce will be doing the Perry White role in
Perfect.
the new Superman movies, which
no notes.
no notes. They nailed that one. As bad as that first picture looked of Superman putting his boots on, this one I can get behind. I think this will be fun. I think it's a great role for him, a great casting decision, and I look for at least they're nailing some of it, so it gives you a little bit more hope in going into that one. So we'll see. As things keep leaking out and coming out about that Superman movie, we'll see. And I know, Kev, you brought up that we posted it on the Panels and Frames Twitter account that this is sort of, we're celebrating Superman all month long because it was the release, the print date for the Action Comics #1, which premiered Superman with the 12 pages inside the 66-page comic. And so all month long, follow along on our Twitter feed as we give fun facts and fun things about the Superman career through the comics, through the TV shows, all the TV shows that they've done, and all the movies that they've done, including the new one coming out.
I feel like we made the right choice. We had an internal discussion about whether April was Superman month or June was, and we decided to go with what was, on the comic.
Upcoming, since we were already past April.
We had to do something for June and thought,
but then we would have had to figure out, whatever the August one was, probably originally came out in June.
Yeah.
It's always confusing with those things and the way comics do that and the prints and the print run, but it was actually published in August or April, but the cover said June. So whatever. So we went with June, and we'll keep posting some polls and some fun facts and things that we've enjoyed about the Superman stories over the years as we go forward. So
we can see your comments, the Breeze. Your test was successful. It's even worse now, and I'm just gonna bitch for 1 second because publications now digitally and print are different. So they're released on different schedules. I've been waiting very patiently because I think I said last week, I've recently gotten back into reading books, and like I caught up on like 5 different series because I was just hungry for it. And now I'm like, wait, it's the same thing with the binging. It's like I've gotten to like book 3, book 4 in these series, and then it stops. And there's like a huge wait, like a month and a half wait before the next ones are coming out. I'm just like, I haven't done that since I was a kid. Because even shows you wait a week. Like with comics, you have to wait a whole fucking month, and I hate it. It's killing me. Trying to keep all these stories in my head.
You read it like the first day it comes out, and then you have to wait
I check it every day. I look at the Marvel Unlimited. I'm like, is it available? No. Is it available? No. And then literally it'll come out. I'll read it, and then I'll have to wait 30 more days, and I'll be like,
right, and then it's over just like that. You're like, damn it, now I gotta wait again. So you need to have more than one in your holster there that you're
although
into.
if they release them all at once, I'd be like, I don't like that they changed things. I wish it was like the way you. So you're never happy.
And you're like, there's too much to read at once. I can't take it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it is
fun.
confusing though, and it is one of those things that's weird in the comic book world, the way that they do that. But
Wendell Pierce is fucking badass, though.
I love
I'm
it.
so
He's gonna
happy
be
about
great.
that casting.
I love
Jack
it.
Ryan, him and Jack Ryan he was so good. I mean, a lot of
great.
things he was good in, but fucking really good casting.
Yeah,
Did
I
we
think
skip anything? I feel like we had a lot of shit going on.
we had a little
Alright.
bit of video game talk.
Lara Croft. We didn't hit Lara Croft.
The animated Lara Croft series coming to Netflix announced.
Looks
and
cool.
It's the video game segment now.
the video game segment. I think this will be a lot of fun. I think, I think keeping it in the animated, I know they're doing the live action series also on Amazon coming soon, but I think this will be really cool in the animated world. Haley Atwell is doing Laura's voice, which again, we all love her from, the MCU and stuff. So I think this one will be a lot of fun. It should follow again. It's they haven't really announced what the storylines will be or whatever. She has to return home when dangerous, powerful Chinese artifact is stolen from Croft Manor by a thief with an uncanny personal collection. And again, then she goes on their adventure around the world, depths of forgotten tombs.
Lots of tombs. So it'll be
Lots
like
of
levels in a video game almost.
Lots of
Right, so
rating
she's
tombs,
rating
lots of
all
that
of
stuff.
them.
So it should be fun. I think the animated world is very cool. It almost feels closer to kind of the video game world. You're not taking
Might
it
work
so
better
far
for
out.
this character.
Exactly.
Animated might work better for this
Depends
character.
what you're trying to do. For the stories, yeah. For like the thirst trap,
Right.
like
I
think-
thought I
what's her
always felt
name?
like
Right.
I always felt like the movies, the not animated movies were like almost trying to be a female Indiana Jones. Like instead of leaning into what Lara Croft was, they were trying to make it into this other thing,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point, the thirst trap thing, it'd be nice to see Haley Atwell as the character in live action would be fun too. But I get like her voice, I think will lend itself very nicely.
That first one though, they didn't even try to hide it. The Angelina Jolie one, they were like the promos
And that was
were
all
like
that sold that
close
movie.
up on the shorts, right? Like, which honestly, like growing up playing Tomb Raider, that was kind of like a thing. Like
the dual gun,
that is a big part of the game. So
the dual guns, both on her chest and on her side, and the short shorts, and making her kind of the sex symbol Indiana Jones was what drove a lot of that video game sales. It sucks to say, but it's true. And translating that, I know Angelina loved that role and like really, really went for it. It's just too bad those movies, they were fun, but it was such Hollywood action-y. Like they kind of went away from the main storyline of the video games and made it more of this action crazy movie, and just the storyline.
I have a soft spot for now, though. You know what I mean? Like just
of course,
for that category. Like I love going back and watching 90s action films. They don't make action films like that anymore. It's like one of my favorite things to do.
With just bullets spraying everywhere, like in her manner, and she's doing the bungee jumping thing from the roof of the ceiling. Guys are crushed shooting with machine guns and not hitting each other or her or anything. It's just insanity.
Yeah. Like the Jackie Chan movies or the Arnold movies, or
You can never go wrong with the Arnold movies, though. Come on, those are just classics. But yeah, I'm hoping with the animated series, and it's on Netflix, which Netflix kind of has a good run with some of the animation stuff. I do enjoy. They did a great. My wife and I love this Jurassic Park series that they did called Camp Crustaceous, and then they just released the new version of that as the kids are older. But what was cool about that was, I'm gonna go off here a little bit, but it tied into the Jurassic Park and the Jurassic World movies. Like they actually made it canon in those and had things from the movies related into the cartoon. So watching it wasn't just like a one-off waste of your time. You're actually like, oh, that makes sense because that was in the movie, or oh, that's the same thing from the movie. So that was cool. I liked how they did that, and like I said, they kind of have a good run with doing some of the animation. So
I'm cautiously optimistic.
I agree. We'll see how it is. I'm hoping it's fun and action packed and interesting, and that's again, we talked about video games to the small screen and even the big screen, and some hit and some miss. Hopefully, this one will be a hit, and one that was a hit and is getting its season 2, and they're talking a lot about it, is Fallout, which I loved. It was so good, and I'm so excited to hear that they're cranking through trying to write season 2 right now. And when asked how long they expect it to go, they've said they're not putting a time on it. They wanted it to go 3 seasons. Now it was such a big hit, they're hoping for 5 seasons, but every season they're approaching it with, when they end it, it will have sort of a wrap up for that season with a little bit of a tease for something to come. So if it happens to get canceled, you're not left going, well, we got this huge cliffhanger and we don't know how they're going to wrap it up. So at least they're
once they need to cancel it for tax reasons or whatever.
Right. Oh,
whoa.
There he is.
What
that was
happened?
weird. But yeah,
your janky internet.
I appreciate shows that kind of do that as well. Like, it's a good way to set up things so you're not like, oh my God, you're left with all these questions and the show will never come back. And maybe we'll get a movie at some point which will explain things. And then
my thing is, I've never played that video game. I never played the Last of Us video game. So I'm a little lost going into it. And I don't know, it doesn't grab me as much,
but it's still good. I think it's still good enough show standalone. I mean, it's got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty insane.
Do you have to know the video game?
What's that?
Do you have to know the video? I haven't watched Fallout at all. My kids said it was good. Do I have to know the video game to watch it?
No, you can get away with not knowing it. It sets it up pretty well without knowing it. If you do know the video game, some of the things make a little bit more sense to you, and it follows that world a lot better just with what's set up. But even if you don't, you can jump into it. And same with The Last of Us. Like, it's so set in that apocalyptic and explains things where you don't really need to know the video. If you know the video game, you understand some of the spoilers and some of the twists coming and some of the things to expect, especially in Last of Us. But in this one, you don't really need it. It's just sort of the world building and what it is. And I'm hoping that, they'll be able to spin it off even and create other worlds, because there's such a great world in Fallout, that in this post-apocalyptic world, and the creatures and the people and what they set up with why the nuclear war, or the thing happened, was so cool, that there's a lot of different ways to go. And there's so many vaults that you could really expand the storyline out and do things. And the way they ended this season with the tease for New Vegas, which was one of the games, was awesome. And I can't wait to see what they do with season 2. So it's really exciting that it did so well, and that they're planning on at least doing 1 to 2 more seasons. I think they even said like they're planning on writing season 3 after season 2. So it's ready to go, because it's just got such a high rating that hopefully it doesn't fall off and they kill season 2, but I don't see how they could. I think they've got too good of a thing going for it. So it's exciting.
As long as people watch, they'll keep making it.
Right. And
clicks, as long as someone clicks, that's all that matters.
Streamers, you never know either. Like, I feel like things with streamers get canceled so nonchalantly, like, just like I said, like, you're in the middle of a season 2 of a 4-season run and they're just like, nah, we're done. And you're like, wait, there's so many unanswered questions that I need answered.
That whole Catwoman movie or whatever it was. Didn't they do Batwoman or Catwoman or something?
Batwoman.
Batgirl, that got finished and then just got canned. And same thing with the
but I think that's different though. He was preparing the company to be sold, and well, like, I don't think that's across the board for all studios. I think that's
specific to Warner Bros. Because they did the same thing with the Coyote versus Roadrunner movie that was finished and killed that too as a tax write-off, because somehow
but that's not what all the studios are doing.
You make more money, or you save more money by not releasing it and getting a tax write-off for killing it than you would if you released it, which is just fucked up.
It's super messed up.
So someone needs to leak that shit so I can see it, because the Coyote movie I so wanted to see. I
know. Like, yes, somebody should. Somebody who knows they're going out, just throw it out on the internet. Come on.
You got 3 months to live and you got access. Just release it. Screw the NDA.
Right? I agree. Totally, Kev.
All right. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think we hit on everything today. That was a fun discussion about stuff. So, looking forward to next week. We'll have some more cool stuff. We'll talk Acolyte episode 3. We'll talk more whatever's coming out.
Hopefully we'll get some Nintendo news. They're supposed to have a direct, this month. I don't know when it is, but I'm hoping it'll be this week, because I'm really excited about that too. But
yep.
We'll
and see. Sunday we have Fish Tales. Make sure you tune in Sunday.
Fish Tales.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.